There is kind of the stigma out there that if people are experiencing homelessness, it was somehow their fault, they made bad choices. In our experience, I would say that that is most of the time not the case at all. So we work with a lot of families and they are working. They are employed full time. And the salaries that people are making or the wages that people are making is just not enough to cover their basic needs. In the past few years, we're seeing that housing is no longer affordable. If there's one little setback, if the kid is sick for a week and they miss a week of work, if their car breaks down and there's a car repair, these are just things that begin to become a domino effect within the household.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 Strength and Health Authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Welcome to the Strong by Design podcast. I'm your host today, Coach Tonya Fines. And with me, I have Tammi from Dawning Family Services. Now, if you've never heard of Dawning Family Services, this is really going to, this show is really going to blow your mind, because this is an organization that's doing some fabulous things here in Tampa Bay. I'm not going to do any spoilers here. I want you to hear straight from Tammi what all they're doing. But before I let Tammi speak, I just want to let you know a little bit about her just very quickly. She is the CEO of Dawning Family Services, and she began working there in 2015, what it was known as Alpha House of Tampa. So if you are listening and you're from the Tampa area, you may have heard of or be familiar with Alpha House, but that is what Dawning Family Services is. Tammi holds a master's degree in social work, focusing on macro systems and nonprofit management. She also has a master's degree in teaching English as a second or other language. So, Tammi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tonya. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. Now, we connected. We've been going back and forth trying to get you on the show. It's just been, I've been away, then you were sick. So we're finally getting the show done, which I'm really excited about. But I connected to you through Jamie, who I met at a networking event. And when I heard his little quick pitch, when they go around the room and ask you to introduce yourself and what do you do, my ears instantly perked up, because what you guys do and what you're involved in is a cause that's very near and dear to my heart. So before I say any more, Tammi, tell us what Dawning Family Services is and what you guys are doing.
Sure. So Dawning Family Services, Tonya, as you mentioned, we used to be Alpha House of Tampa. And in 2018, we rebranded as Dawning Family Services and expanded our mission. So we work with families with minor children in the household who are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. And we provide a continuum of services to support them on their journey to finding and maintaining permanent housing.
Right. Now, this is really wonderful because the homelessness crisis, I'm going to call it a crisis, is something that, homelessness has bothered me my whole life. I never felt scared. it really bothered me, like from a small child. It bothered me. I could not figure out how people could be on the street or without a home. I was one of the lucky ones. I had a home and a family, so I was very blessed. So it's something that's always bothered me. And you'd sent me some notes here about Dawning last week, and I was going through, and I was just completely blown away by how well structured, how you've got things structured and set up. Because what I'm looking at here is basically an action plan that is really set up to help people get out of homelessness and actually be successful. You're not just handing out, here's some money, here's some food, here's some help, here's some financial aid. You're actually providing services to help people get back into life, which is really phenomenal, because we are talking about families. You guys deal, your niche is families. And I don't think a lot of people understand, or shouldn't say understand, sorry if I offended anybody. I'm wondering if people when they're walking down the street or they're out and about in their community and they see that person, sitting on a park bench and, doesn't smell very good, clearly needs a bath, has, the stereotypical homeless individual. But beyond that, there are families with small children that are going to school, and they are homeless. They are living in cars or, squatting in places wherever they can find, where the family can find something. So, can you talk a little bit about how that is a problem in our area? The fact that families that are homeless is something that is going on and is very real, particularly in Tampa Bay.
Yes, I think, we work, specifically in Hillsborough County. And I think family homelessness is often hidden from what the public sees. And it looks very different than kind of the stigma attached to homelessness or the beliefs people might have or the myths that are out there. So in working with families, we find that oftentimes they really are hidden from view. There is a concern for families that if they're experiencing homelessness, that they're going to get in trouble with Child Protective Services or possibly get in trouble with the law. So this causes much more of a trauma for the family because they're afraid to come for help. They're afraid to seek services because there is a concern, whether founded or unfounded, depends on the situation, but that they're going to get in trouble. Or people are going to tell them that they're bad parents. And so part of why they stay hidden is also to continue to protect their children. If they're school-age children are not always nice. And so it's really hard for children who have been identified as homeless in the school system as well, because they often face a lot of ridicule and bullying. And so there's this tendency for parents to keep this a secret, to protect their family, to protect their children. So it oftentimes makes it harder for them to come forward and ask for help.
Yeah, very, very sad, because I think just picking up on some of the things you said, it can certainly sustain that fear-based reality, right. Wanting to get out, but the fear of, stepping up and saying, this is my situation now. Am I going to lose my children? Am I going to end up in jail? What's going to happen? Right. Because your family's already under, in a traumatic situation. The last thing they want is this fragmenting to happen. So with that being said, how do, well, first of all, I want to back up a little. I do have that. I'm writing notes as I'm coming up with questions as we're talking. But what I really loved when I was looking at sort of this background bio that you sent me was how Dawning has identified 4 pillars. And I love it because you break it down so beautifully into very specific areas of need. I'm kind of guessing that at sometimes maybe a family's going to need all 4, but it gives you a way to work on the specific issues because again, you're actually trying to support, you're working at supporting and helping people getting back into life, some form of a stable home life, so that they can, go to work and pay the rent and pay the bills, and the kids have a place to come home to, the same place every day after school. So your 4 pillars are the prevention and diversion program, the emergency bridge housing program, rapid rehousing, and work for success, which I really love. That whole thing of, teach a man to fish and you'll feed him for life kind of thing. Right. I love that. So let's talk with us about what the prevention and diversion program focuses on.
The prevention program is one of the newest programs to our agency and was set up 2 years ago because we identified that there's a large population of families that are at risk of becoming homeless. Either they're living with family or friends and they're telling them that they need to leave, or the landlord is increasing their rent and they can't afford it. So for various reasons, families might find themselves kind of at the brink of homelessness. And within the community, for those families, it's really hard to tap into services. So if you're not yet homeless, you're not able to access a lot of the homeless services that are available in the community. And so oftentimes these families needed supports. They needed help trying to navigate complex system. They needed someone to help mediate between them and the landlord to see if we could come to a rent agreement that was affordable to the family. And we provide case management services with our homeless prevention specialists who will work with the families to step in and try to help them find alternative housing options so that they don't enter into the homeless system, so that they don't have to move into a homeless shelter or end up living in the streets, because that's a really traumatic experience for a family to face. And so we're looking to step in before that happens to help these families either maintain their housing if it's safe and possible, or to obtain new housing. And the hope is that there would be a seamless transition from one place to another so that they're not falling into homelessness.
That's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful. Because if you can interject before they become homeless, then that's one less family that's ending up on the street. So it's kind of like trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit.
Right, exactly. And we were really excited to be able to offer this program. Historically, we've worked with families experiencing homelessness, so it was really great to add this to our continuum of services, and it felt like a great fit for us organizationally and also for what we wanted to provide to the community.
Love it. And so now talk a little bit about the rapid rehousing service that you provide.
Okay. Our rapid rehousing program provides rental and utility assistance for families who are classified as literally homeless. So these are families that are living in shelters, in their cars, in their streets, or other places not meant for habitation. This program is organized through a community-wide effort. So to get into the program, there is an agency in our community, Tampa Homeless Initiative. Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative.
Yeah, it's a big long.
Right, exactly. THHI. And we work in coordination with them to we complete a risk assessment for all of the families and individuals in the community needing this service. And then there is a priority list that we work from. And that is the way that we get the family contacts to be entered into this program. And then we also, for those families that are in our shelter, we are able to utilize those funds to help them transition out of our shelter program. And this rapid rehousing program can work with families for up to a year, depending on the needs, to really make sure that they're stabilized in that housing and have the services put in place that they need.
Nice, very nice. And what about the other one? There's two more here. So the Emergency Bridge Housing Program.
So our Emergency Bridge Housing is short-term emergency shelter. So these are for families who are in crisis and are experiencing homelessness in the moment. And we really wanted to focus on those families that were unsheltered, that were living in the streets, or living in places not meant for habitation, because we have limited capacity in that program. And so we felt that those that are unsheltered needed to be the priority that we were working with. And it gives them a safe place where they're able to bring their children. So they're, living in a unit by themselves. It's just the family unit. and it gives them time to stabilize while they're focusing on ending their homelessness. Our program uses a housing first approach, and that is the philosophy and our belief that housing is the number one need for family stability. And so we work quickly to move them into their own housing. And then we work on what other services do they need. Do they need medical care? Do they need counseling? Do they need to enroll their children in school? That's not to say that if a need comes up while they're in shelter, we ignore it. But, certainly we understand that sometimes it's really hard for families to focus on gainful employment if they don't know where they're sleeping next. And so it really is our belief, let's get them housed and then wrap them with the services that they may need.
Right.
And every family has unique needs. So, they need different things. Some of them need short-term assistance. Some of them need longer-term assistance. It really just depends on the family dynamic and what's happening within the household.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So that brings me to that last pillar on the sheet here, which is work for success, which I love. When I read this, I'm like, I love this, because this is really what, for me, all of it's great, but this for me is what's giving, this part gives them power. This helps give them some power back in building their life back up.
Yes. So the Work for Success program is also a new addition to our agency and started in 2021. And we felt it was important to have our own internal employment program, because we really understand the needs. Like, our specialty is families experiencing homelessness, and a lot of mainstream employment programs are going to have requirements or protocols in place that don't necessarily work with the families that we're working with. And so understanding homelessness, the employment program works with them based on what they need. So we don't necessarily have a 6-week workshop where they have to come every Tuesday night in order to continue to participate. For a lot of the families we're working with, that just isn't going to work. And for families that are looking for employment but are sleeping in their car, it is really difficult for them to be able to do that. But we can work with them in the meantime on getting their resume together, finding out what type of jobs are they interested in, and kind of coming up with a game plan moving forward. And there are lots of families who are working and living in the car or living in the streets, and so being able to help them do that successfully while they're looking for permanent housing.
Yeah, really, that's very powerful stuff right there. So, and I know this is not necessarily a question that has a definite answer, like there's one answer, but based on your experience and the people that you work with and what you're seeing, what would you say are some of the top contributors to homelessness? I know, I'm going to interject here, but there tends to be, I think, a lot of times a stigma with it, particularly when you're walking around and you see those individuals. There's definitely a lot of times there's a stigma attached to it, which is something I always like to try to address, because it's, I always look at those people and say, well, that was somebody's little boy or little girl. That was a child brought home from a hospital. That was a baby. What happened between then and now that led to this? And sometimes it's simply really bad life choices. And that's where people end up. It just happens. But in your capacity working with families, what would you say are some of the biggest contributions that, get people that end up, kind of getting them into these situations where they are homeless or on the brink of homelessness?
I would say in our case, and, Tonya, I appreciate you saying it, there is kind of the stigma out there that if people are experiencing homelessness, it was somehow their fault. They made bad choices. In our experience, I would say that that is most of the time not the case at all. So we work with a lot of families, and they are working. They are employed full time, and the salaries that people are making, or the wages that people are making, is just not enough to cover their basic needs. And in the past few years, this has always been the case, but in the past few years, we're seeing that housing is no longer affordable.
It's not. It isn't.
And so that really is the biggest thing. It's like, these are families that if they could find an apartment that was within their economic means, they would be able to sustain that. And they would be able to maintain their housing and, keep jobs and be able to get the food and meet all of their basic needs. But with the cost of housing, it is becoming impossible for many people, not just, people always think of it as, they're low income or they're in poverty, but we're finding that a 2-bedroom apartment to rent is at minimum $1,700 a month. That is a lot of money for someone who is making $15, $20 an hour. So trying to make that all happen, if there's one little setback, if the kid is sick for a week and they miss a week of work, if their car breaks down and there's a car repair, these are just things that begin to become a domino effect within the household.
Right. So you taking a family that's already trying very hard to make things work. And life happens. I mean, we're not talking major life, global, catastrophic, but life happens. Children get sick. A parent has to stay home, or, you get sick and you can't go to work. Like, life happens, and there's no breathing room. There's no buffer for these families.
Right. Right. When your means of income are already stretched thin, it's one small step. And most families, most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. And so when there's a dip in that, you get behind, and oftentimes it's hard to get out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just kind of like the Rolling Stone.
Right.
It just, so, when it comes to, families, because again, you talked, you very well spoke about how, you spoke very well about how, when it's a family, there's the fear of, I don't want to lose my children. I don't want to get in trouble with the law. I'm trying really hard, but here we are, we're at this point, what, how do you either find the families? How do they come to you? Because it is hard. It is hard. It's when things are going well, and something happens, it's hard to ask for help. It's kind of like human nature. It's hard to ask for help. We want to be able to do it on our own. But then you take that situation, which is very special, very unique, a lot of trauma, a lot of fear, How is it that they're able to come to you, or that you approach them? How can you get in there to help and sort of help break that cycle and get these people back on their feet? I'm just wondering, what is it that makes it not possible, because it's possible, but less fearful for them to either reach out, or is it, do you have people coming up, knocking on the door going, we need help? Or are you guys out there finding people,
So people come to us through all different means. Some of them are coming to our property and knocking on the door, as you said. We have our website set up so that people can fill out a request for help form. So it provides a little anonymity. Up until we start working with them. And then we get phone calls. We also have local service providers that reach out to us because they might be working with a family and will call to see if we can help provide services. We have great relationships with the hospitals in the area. So oftentimes the hospital social workers will call and reach out to us because they're working with a family who they know is either going to be leaving the hospital, going into a homeless situation, or they're leaving the hospital and going back into an unsafe situation for various reasons. So getting the referrals has never been a concern, but lately we're experiencing such a increase in the volume of requests for help that we get that it's being able to connect with all of those families. Most of the time our programs are functioning at capacity. And so when families are reaching out to us, we might not be able to provide them services, but we always try to make a connection and provide them with other resources in the community that may be able to help them. And that is getting harder. You know, it's one of the things we pride ourselves on. If someone comes to us for help, we don't just say, sorry, we're at capacity, and hang up the phone. We tell them we are at capacity. What other needs do you have that we might be able to assist with, or where can we refer you to? And that is, a service that we provide, and it feels important to us to provide that. But it's getting more and more difficult to have those personal conversations with everyone that is looking for assistance, just because of the sheer volume of requests for help that we get.
And what do you think is the cause, or like what's the catalyst behind that? This all of a sudden you're at capacity, and there's, like you said, the sheer volume is quite big. What do you think is contributing to that right now?
I would say the housing crisis. Not having affordable housing, whether that's rental stock or houses to buy, and that drives up supply and demand, and so it's driving up prices. Also the rate of inflation. So I heard the other day on the news that Tampa is the number 9 in the metropolitan areas for rate of inflation, and so it is hard to keep up with the increasing costs for everything, whether it's food, gas, people's electric bills are doubling.
Oh my gosh,
yeah. And there's lots of families who are facing homelessness for the first time because it's just, people aren't able to keep up. I think everyone is really struggling to keep up. And the price of eggs hits $4.
I know, eggs is like the big conversation topic right now in town.
Right.
But
even some of the basics, I went to buy my nephew mac and cheese the other day, and I was surprised it was $2 a box. It's like this.
It used to be 69 cents.
Right, exactly. And so everything is just increasing, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to even meet their basic needs.
Just basic needs. Yes. I got my electric bill, 2 weeks ago, I guess. And I'm kids are all grown and left the nest kind of thing. So it's just me. And I'm hardly ever home. I'm home when I do a podcast and like in the evenings when I'm working, but usually during the day I'm out meeting with clients, networking meetings, just I'm on the go a lot. So I'm not home a lot. So the use of electricity in my home is the bare minimum. It really is. And I got my electric bill the other day and I almost had a stroke. I was like, that's double. That's double what it was last month. And if anything, I've been home less because I've actually been traveling a lot in the last 6 weeks. So I haven't really not been around. So I'm like, is somebody living? Is there like a family of 9 that's staying here when I'm not?
It's like, what's going on?
What's going on? But when I saw that, I got sick to my stomach. I thought, that is double. How is that possible? And then my next thought was like, how do people with kids that are working at minimum wage jobs, or even just making in Tampa, if you're making 20 or 25 an hour, you're doing pretty darn good in terms of like what are employers willing to pay you, but it's not going to cut it. It is, and that even times 2. So if you're saying like $40, $50 an hour, that's still barely going to help you. Just like you said, your basic needs, the basic needs.
Right.
It's very sad. And that was my thought. I was like, how do families that are just, doing their best. How are they doing it and feeding children? And then my second thought was, how do, those kids young coming out of school or university that want to get into life and start something, how do they start it? Like, I mean, I don't know how you do it. So when it comes to a family and you're trying to keep yourself from getting on the street, it would be incredibly difficult, like really challenging. Because like you said, one thing, somebody gets sick, and that just will set you back months and months. So very sad. How many families would you say you're helping right now?
Right now, oh goodness, I don't know how many we're helping at the moment. I think usually within all of our programs, at any given time, it could be, up to 60 families at a time.
Okay, wow. And is that, would you say 60 families, like right now with your staffing and resources and stuff, is 60 families kind of your top limit, or what's
yes.
Okay.
Yes, 60 families would be would pretty much be our top limit.
Right. Now, where does the support for you guys come from? Like, I mean, all of it. Like, where does it, in terms of any of the help and the resource, like how does Dawning fill its toolbox, and from where and how does it do that to help these families?
In terms of funding?
All of it, funding, support, like all of, like how do you guys do what you do? Where does the support come from for you to be able to run these programs and help these families?
So a lot of our funding comes from federal grants, local grants, family foundations, and then of course private donations, corporations, and our special event. We are finding post-COVID that a lot of our funders are funding at a level that's lower than pre-COVID. So funding is getting more difficult to gather. And that's why we're trying to do a lot of awareness, because we're really going to become dependent on corporations and individuals to really come together as a community and support the families within our community that are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And, outside the funding, we do a lot of training with our staff. You asked about the toolkit. So training, we're always doing research on what are the best practices. Are we doing best practices? What is a lot of the funding that we get comes from HUD, maybe not directly from HUD, but it, gets funneled down to us. And, they are a large federal agency. And so they often have the funds to kind of do the research on what are the best practices and how do we best serve our families. And so we're always looking to make sure that our services are in line with that. So making sure that our staff is able to get the training that they need to help these families. And also making sure that our staff feel supported, because the work we do is difficult. It can be very taxing. It is sad. It's often sad and frustrating to see what families are going through and what they're experiencing. So to kind of make sure that we keep our toolbox full, we really need to make sure that, staff is well supported as well, so that they can continue to carry on the work that they do.
Okay. Now, what about, do you have volunteers? Do you guys take volunteers?
Yes, we do. We do have different volunteer options at our agency. We have needs. A lot of the needs that we have are somewhat administrative tasks. Like we would love for volunteers to come in and help us with some of our programs or workshops. We also have a food pantry, and so we look for volunteers. It's a small food pantry to kind of help those in an immediate need or immediate crisis, kind of helping us organize that and keeping that full.
Yeah.
And then we have volunteers who are they might be part of a larger organization or a place of worship, and they help us by doing different drives, food drives, or drives for linens, towels, to help us, kind of keep our shelter continually stocked with the basic kind of comforts of home when our families are in our shelter programs.
Okay, good to know. And we'll get all of, for those of you listening, if you're listening and you're thinking you want to get involved or help out somehow, we're going to, towards the end of the show, I'll get you to just tell us all the places we can find you. But we'll also include it in the show notes for those of you listening. So it's not like if you don't hear it or you're driving in your car, you can still get it.
People can go back and look.
Go back and look, absolutely. So I wanted to, you gave me some statistics here on Dawning Family Services, like your 2022 achievements. And I want to read them out because I was really impressed. So for anybody listening, or because I think sometimes we hear about, we have a crisis and there's these organizations that are helping, but sometimes people, they really want to know, well, what's the impact that they're really having? Because you don't want to throw your time and money at something that it's like just paying the staff, or it's getting filtered somewhere else, or they're just not really doing it, because that does happen. There are charities and foundations out there that have a very good speech, but beyond the speech, not a lot's happening. But you sent me some statistics here, and I was like, wow, like you guys, you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. Like you are doing things and making things happen, and very quickly, because when is it? You came on board in 2015, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so 2015. It's 2023. That's still a short amount of time to some big things happen, and this is just last year. So last year, the community impact from Dawning was 72%. You guys helped 72% of families in rapid rehousing signed leases for permanent housing. 72%. Yes. Like that is phenomenal. I was like, that's 72%. That to me, that's a huge success.
Thank you.
Right there. 79% of participants in employment services obtained jobs. So you help 79% of people actually get jobs. You got 72% of families in permanent housing, 79% of them got them jobs. 80% of families in shelter were moved into stable housing. 80%. That's incredible. And 50% of families were prevented from entering the homeless system. So those are some pretty impressive, those are damn impressive statistics.
Thank you. Yeah, we are a small staff, and we work really hard. And so I'm proud of the team for all of their accomplishments. And as you mentioned earlier, Tonya, it really is through those 4 pillars of services we're able to achieve that, because the programs work together. The programs aren't siloed. And so, oftentimes, like you said, some families hit all four of those programs. And that's really how we're able to achieve great success. We have dedicated staff that work tirelessly to support our families. I also have to give credit to the families themselves, because they're doing the work. We're helping them, we're walking alongside them in their journey, but they're the ones doing the work, and they trust us. They trust us to walk alongside them in their journey. And so we've just been able to accomplish a lot of great things despite what's going on in the economy.
Yeah, it's not an easy time for most of us, for most people, but for those that already have challenges and are struggling, which I think is a lot.
Right.
It's just it's a really different ball game right now.
Yes.
Everybody's feeling it, so I can't imagine treading water at that pace constantly, just trying to keep my family together.
Right.
And a roof over our heads. So now I was going to ask you, I know you can't, there's a whole confidentiality thing, but are you willing to or able to, can you share a story with us? Maybe is there a story that kind of sticks out to you, that's kind of stuck with you? a success story, anybody that, without telling us who they are, but just giving
Right. No, I understand. And usually if we share anyone's story, we've made sure that the family is okay with us, with us doing that. So, but it's always hard when you say share a story, because it's which one do we pull from? So, one of the examples I can give you is, one of the families that was moving through our prevention program. So this was a young mother who had one child, and she was living with her mom, her son, and 3 of her siblings. And things were fine between the 2 households. They were making ends meet and able to pay bills. There was times that this young woman wanted to leave because she didn't feel it was the best situation, but for the time it was working for her and her son. At one point, the mother, the young woman's mother, was incarcerated, and this young woman then had guardianship of her 3 siblings. So she was 25 years old, and her siblings were, I know one was a teenager, one was 15, I believe one was around the age of 10, and one was the age of 7. So at 25 years old, she is now taking on a caregiving role of not only her young child, but 3 of her siblings. Unfortunately, because of the loss of that second income, she wasn't able to keep up with the expenses of rent. Our prevention program was already working with that family, because we were trying to help stabilize them before all of this other happened. At one point, she was evicted from the apartment because she was behind on rent, losing that income, and was going to end up living in her car. Because she was involved with our prevention program, we were able to assist her and get her into a hotel, and assist her with paying the hotel so that the family would not end up in the streets. This young woman worked day and night to make sure that her siblings and her son were supported and had what they needed. While in the hotel, we were helping her pay the fees for those. So all of the money she was making, she was saving. Within an 8-week period of time, we were able to help her find an apartment that she was able to move into. Because she had been working so hard and saving her money, some of the move-in costs she was able to pay on her own, which was extremely empowering that she was able to do this. And then we were able to access some funds through the Children's Board of Hillsborough County to help her with the other portion of the move-in costs that she just wasn't able to come up with. Mostly because moving into an apartment these days is $6,000, out the gate.
Oh, yeah, first month, last month, and you're damaged. So there you go.
Right. Yeah. And we didn't want her to deplete all of her savings, because she was going to get into this housing, and we wanted to make sure she had that safety net. So this young woman did move into this apartment. She got legal guardianship of her siblings, and so she's living in this apartment with her son and her 3 siblings, and has a job that will allow her to maintain that household. And we were able to connect her with services that would help her with what we call kinship care. So when you take on guardianship of a family member, there's organizations out there that will help you. So we wanted to connect her to the resources that specialized in that. Because again, kinship care isn't our specialty, so we wanted to make sure that she had the supports in place, because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really difficult to be, 25 and trying to take care of a 15-year-old. So,
Who's your sister?
plus just the services those children might have, having a parent who is incarcerated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, but it's so nice to hear, and nice to hear her commitment to the whole process too, because I can't imagine 25 and having all of that. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and so again, this is also an example of at what point could we say to that young woman, this was because of decisions you made. It wasn't.
It wasn't.
It was circumstances beyond her control. And at the time of, several different major life-changing events, her standing up to care for her siblings, her son, and, being committed to providing them a safe and stable home.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, Tammi, where can people listening, where can they find you? Where are all the platforms, places they can go to find you if they want to either learn more or actually reach out in terms of like how can they help and contribute and support what you guys are already doing?
Sure.
Where can we find you?
So our website is dawningfamilyservices.org. So the full agency name written out. Mm-hmm. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and the handle for those is also Dawning Family Services. So people can find us on social media or through our website.
Wonderful. Well, Tammi, thank you so much for being on the show and telling us about Dawning and what you guys do. I think what you're doing is wonderful. I really, really do. And like I said, the statistics speak for themselves. If you guys are able to do that, help in that big a way, then what you're doing is really working. So I thank you so much for your contribution to Hillsborough community, and you're making your mark in terms of doing something about this crisis of homelessness, particularly with families, because it's incredibly sad. I mean, it's sad no matter what, but there's something extra sad for me, anyways, when you're looking at families and children being involved and all of that. It's terribly devastating. So, thank you for what you're doing to save the family unit. Because that's really what it does. It saves the family unit. So, thank you again, and thank you those of you that joined us today and listened. I hope this show really impacted you, and I hope it's got you thinking about this crisis, whether you're in Tampa, Hillsborough, Pasco, or whether you're listening from some other state or even country. I hope it's got you thinking about the impact of, homelessness on families, and, what organizations are there in your community that are helping, and how can you be a part of that solution so we can save families, because, our community rests on the strength of our families. We need our families. And we need
and Tonya, if I could just leave you and your listeners with this, because it was shocking for me to hear this. But Florida is ranked number 4 in the country for the highest population of family homelessness.
Wow.
And so when we think of Florida, we think of beaches in Disney World, and Florida is a great state to live in, but there's also a lot of families that are struggling. And I was surprised to find out that the state I live in is ranked number 4.
There you go, folks. We need to do something about that number. We need to change that number, and it's going to take all of us to do that. So I hope you will, after hearing the show, I hope when you have a moment, you will look, get on your computer or your phone and take a look into what Dawning's doing and other services in the community, and be a part of the solution. Be a part of the solution, because we can't be number 4. That's just that's not okay. That is not okay that we're number 4. That means we have children sleeping on park benches and in vehicles and in, buildings that are already falling down and unsafe. And that's just not okay. That's not okay. So we need to do something about it. So that's my challenge to those of you listening today, is to step up and let's be a part of making some really amazing change here in Tampa and in Florida. And let's get out of number 4 spot.
Yes.
Let's just get off the chart altogether.
Let's be number 50.
Yeah, let's be at
Let's
the
have the
bottom.
lowest.
Let's be at the bottom. That's a good list that we want to be on the bottom of.
Right, exactly.
We don't want to be at the top of that list. We want to be at the bottom. So again, thank you, Tammi. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And thank you so much for what you're doing with Dawning. I can't wait to have you back on the show and find out more, in a couple of months and see where things are at and how we're getting out of that number 4 spot. That's the goal, get out of number 4. So thank you again, Tammi. And for you listening, if you liked our show, please give us a 5-star review and share this with somebody that it'll also impact, and hit them in the feels. Because I think that's where this one goes. It goes right to the feels. So take care, everybody. Coach Tonya here. Can't wait to talk with you again.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.